Here in the state of Florida specifically, it's the courts favor the mom. The courts, moms should be the primary caretaker. And maybe that's a historical way of thinking, but it's just simply not supported by the law anymore.
Welcome to the Verdict Signal podcast, where we feature how top attorneys help people make informed choices, avoid common mistakes, and move forward with confidence. Now, enjoy the show, and here's your host.
Daniel Gao here. I'm the host of Verdict Signal, and today we're expanding our conversations to the experts who protect what people build, their careers, families, and businesses. I have Grace Flores, the founder and managing attorney of Grace Law, PA, a Florida-based law firm focused on family law and personal injury. With years of experience advocating for individuals and families through some of life's most challenging transitions, Grace is known for her strategic advocacy, compassionate client service, and practical approach to problem solving. Before launching her own firm, she built a successful law career representing clients in complex family law and civil litigation matters through Central Florida. As an entrepreneur, attorney, and community educator, Grace is passionate about empowering people with the knowledge and resources they need to protect their families, their futures, and their financial well-being. So Grace, welcome and glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, Danny. I'm very happy to be here, excited to be here today.
Yeah, so let's start from the very beginning. What first got you interested in the legal field?
I've always had a passion for law. Even very early in high school, I was always in my guidance counselor's office, always exploring my next options, what is going to be the next step in college. When I got to college, I immediately went into pre-law. But as a young 20-year-old often does, I explored other options. I was like, should I go into psychology, maybe some communication? And something always just kept drawing me back to the law. So I changed my major twice in undergrad and then did go back to pre-law. I've just always find it fascinating. I believe that the study of law is really just a study of the human race. The law impacts everything we do in our life, whether you're going to start a business or you're going to get married or someone brings a promise to you that just happens to be legally binding. The law really integrates everything we do in our life. And so in studying the law, I've always been fascinated. Even a boring contracts class that you would think would be very uninteresting. At the end of the day, it's a story of people's lives, and it's always fascinated me.
Okay. And is that why you decided to focus specifically on the family law side, or was something else that kind of prompted you to go in that specific direction?
Sure. I think I fell into family law, and that happens often in a lot of attorneys' stories. So sometimes life happens and just certain elements kind of align to bring you to where you are. I was a paralegal for 15 years prior to going to law school. I started my family and kind of deferred some time prior to going to law school. So I did go back much later in life compared to your traditional story. And one of my great colleagues, I was her paralegal, and she just treated me with such respect, and we gained such a friendship, even though I was her staff. And she really mentored me. And the conversation organically came up like, hey, I wanted to go to law school, but I've started my family. I think that time has passed for me. And she's like, no, she encouraged me to go back. She said she was going to start her own law firm, and it was going to be a family law firm. And she said, go and finish school and come back, and I will hire you as my first associate. And that's exactly what we did. And she mentored me, and she was a great friend. She was doing family law, and I inadvertently got divorced my first year of law school. It wasn't planned, but as life happens. So I've done the co-parenting and the divorce. And so I find it really gratifying. It's kind of fallen into my lap, and it's also become my passion in life.
Okay. And so then that led you to start your own law firm, Grace Law, then.
Correct, correct. So I worked with my mentor for about 4 to 5 years. And then in the beginning of the year, she had reached out to me, and she's like, hey, I've accepted this position as a general magistrate, which is essentially like a backup judge. And she said, I'm going to be dissolving the firm. And so at that point in time, I did some interviews, but I had kind of also had that calling in the back of, my head and my heart to start my own firm. And I grew up here locally. I'm from Orlando, Florida. I went to school here. And so I have a lot of ties to the community. And so I just get anytime there's a legal question in the community, anyone who knows me, they always kind of come and talk to me. And so I had a pretty good book of business. And I thought that that was going to be enough to start me off. And so I took that leap of faith, and I did start my own firm.
Got it. Okay. So now when it comes to working with your clients, I guess what's one thing you wish more people understood about working with an attorney?
Sure. I believe specifically with family law, I think it's a little different. So my practice focuses on two areas of law primarily, which is going to be family law and personal injury. By the time you get in a car accident, you essentially know that you're going to need an attorney. And a lot of our fee structures, at least here in my firm and kind of here locally, are contingency fees. So that means that they're not paying me up front. And if we're able to settle their case or get some compensation on their behalf, they'll pay me out of the settlement.
Mm,
Now, with the bulk of my practice is going to be family law, and it's with usually families that are having some kind of custody disputes or going through a divorce, and no one wants to pay a divorce attorney, you know? So I think that a lot of people really have that reluctance to make that investment in an attorney. And so, specifically in that area of law, you see a lot of people try to represent themselves pro se.
mm,
And they think it's going to be clear cut. And honestly, at the end of the day, nothing in the law is clear cut. It's designed to be complex. There's systems put into place. And so I see a lot of people do a lot of damage to their case. What, any area of law that we're talking about when they're trying to navigate that space without an expert and someone who's trained in that field.
okay. And I'm sure that you get all the time people coming in and saying that, hey, I put this into Chat GBT and just take what I have from Chat GBT and just clean it up a little bit. Or, hey, I saw that from Chat GBT that this situation is similar to mine, so it should be fine, right? So I guess what's been your experience with AI? Like, is it helpful? Is it not helpful? Do people just have to be careful about how they use it? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Sure. I mean, this is a hot button topic. I believe almost every legal seminar that I've attended in the past year has somewhat revolved around AI and how it's going to change and implicate the legal field. And the bottom line is it's just going to it's turned the legal field upside down. It changes everything as far as how we practice, who's coming in and speaking to us. So some of the ways that I've directly seen it impact me is I have what I call my Chat GPT warriors who are on the opposing side, and they are just on Chat GPT. They are drafting up motions. They are making legal arguments that they believe to be sound or are true in the legal field. And then oftentimes it's just not. I think AI is a powerful tool that should be utilized. And I do have some clients that use it to their benefit. I believe that sometimes I have a conversation, a consultation with a client, and they will run it through AI and they are able to get a better of understanding because the way the system's designed, they're throwing in questions and they're kind of getting it back and they can use it as an educational tool. It should not supplement your legal representation. And oftentimes, I mean, and I'm sure everyone's heard of it here in the legal field specifically, it's a lot of talk of case law hallucination and even attorneys who are using AI to conduct their legal research and they're getting case law that's just completely made up. And so that's detrimental even to trained professionals in our field, let alone to the layperson who's trying to navigate that space. So I think AI can be a powerful tool. Use it, certainly. I think that anyone who's not using, I'm so sorry about that, anyone who's not using AI is kind of going to get left behind here to a disadvantage, but it is a tool. And I think it needs to be used carefully and it should not supplement the advice you're getting from attorney. So oftentimes my clients will, AI told me this, and that it shouldn't be used to combat your attorney. We should all be working together.
Got it. Okay. Now, I want to dive a little bit deeper into the family law side of it, and because you specialize in a lot of child-related issues within family law. So, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I'm sure that you get some situations where the parents come to you and they say, "Hey, we want to work this out amicably. We just need to figure out kind of logistically and legally how we can do this." And then you also have the high conflict situations as well. So, I believe you focus a lot on finding the practical solutions. So, how do you go about figuring out what is practical?
Sure. And specifically, so when you're dealing with marital law, it's going to be very state specific. Here in the state of Florida, we really focus on the best interest of the child, and that's actually considered a legal term. And so everything's going to be filtered under that umbrella of, or that lens of, is what is occurring going to be in the best interest of the child? So whether we're discussing custody arrangements, child support, financial decisions, everything needs to be boiled down to, is this in the best interest of our children? I think that's what I find so gratifying about family law is I think it's the area of law that really impacts everyone's life more than any other area of law, because I do think that who you choose as your spouse, as your partner, is going to impact every area of your law. You know, if you're going to have a business or own a home, what you choose to do for money and how you invest your money, your partner is going to have a very, very big impact on that. And then also the law is going to kind of implicate how that gets divvied up if you guys do get divorced. And so having an understanding of that and kind of taking it back to always what are we doing to protect our kids and to put them in the best footing is really important. And I even carry that into once you guys are getting divorced, always filter it back to remove the emotion from it and focus on what we're doing. Is that going to be in the best interest of our kids?
Okay. And with it, when you say that term, best interest of the kids, I'm sure that there's a lot of room for interpretation, especially if it's more of a high conflict situation. So I guess how does it fulfill that best interest of the kids? Like how do you kind of define that, especially if both parents are fighting and they both kind of make good points on each of their own that might be in conflict with each other? How do you deal with that?
Sure. So here specifically in the state of Florida, there's actually a very lengthy Florida statute that revolves around how the courts are to determine what is in the best interest of the child. And that statute is going to have various factors, over 20 factors that the court is going to consider. And then when we're dealing in a separation and divorce, the court's going to consider the ability of one parent to encourage and facilitate the relationship with the other parent. Can this parent remove their emotions from how they feel for this other parent and do what's best for their child and facilitate a relationship? It's going to take into consideration any domestic violence issues, any drinking or substance abuse, the proximity of how the parents, how close they live. You know, if one child's already established in school and one parent moves an hour away, it's going to be difficult to do equal time sharing or to kind of really have the kids going back and forth. So there's certain factors that the court considers. So even if I'm going to litigate a custody case, that's how I'm preparing for trial is I'm hitting each of those factors and I'm trying to see how it's going to weigh against my client. Does it favor them or does it disfavor them? And
Mm,
then I think a big part of dealing with being an attorney and specifically a family law attorney is that counseling aspect of it and really guiding your client. So anytime a client is coming to an attorney, specifically in family law or in personal injury, they're in a very difficult position in their life. And so counseling them through working through some of these emotions and thinking of things from a logistical standpoint or thinking about their kids versus their own emotions is a really big part of my job.
okay. And so now, when you deal with a situation where it's really high conflict custody cases, I'm sure that makes it infinitely more complex and difficult. So, how do you navigate situations where it's just high conflict? The parents just hate each other. They don't want to negotiate or work something out. They just want everything for themselves. Like, how do you navigate a situation like that?
Sure. So again, it goes back to a lot of counseling. So we call it client control. And I really try to approach all of my clients from a point where I'm really trying to counsel them and kind of try to talk them outside of themselves, as well as there's tools that the courts use and that have been put in place within the law and within specifically here, the state of Florida. So for example, in high conflict cases, there are parenting communication tools. So some parents just cannot efficiently communicate. They always end up in some kind of dispute or they disparage each other. And so what we use for that is a parenting app. There's various different apps that they can use and these can be monitored by the court. So you guys are no longer texting each other or you're not calling each other on the phone, you're going to have to use it through this app. There's certain apps that have a tone meter. And so if you're screaming or speaking very aggressively, the app is going to record that and it's going to report it back to the court. The text messages will be put through this app and the court can pull those records. And so now if you're disparaging the other parent, if you're involved in high conflict, if you're threatening, you know, safety is always a big concern within family law, then these apps are tools that we can use to try to deter that. So you guys are going to speak very businesslike. You're going to do it through this app and it's going to be monitored by attorneys and or the court.
Ah, it's interesting. I didn't. That's a brilliant idea. I never even heard of that before.
Sure, sure.
Okay. Now, so we talked a little bit or a lot, quite a bit on the child focus part of this. I think that's kind of the standard as far or like the expect. Okay, in a situation like this, we want to focus on the children, make sure that they're okay. But I want to switch over the different perspectives to now the parent side, because obviously the parents are going through this challenge and this tough situation. So can you talk a little bit more about what are some of the challenges that the parents face when they're going through this? And I'm sure those challenges will differ whether they are amicable and trying to figure it out versus the high conflict. But what are some of the big challenges you see parents facing when they go through this situation?
Sure. You know what I would say? It all kind of boils down to a relinquishment of control. I don't think that you can fully control your spouse when you're married to them, let alone now when you're going through a divorce. It's completely impossible to control everything that this other parent is going to do, or this other spouse, and then bring a child into it, which is kind of just an extension of your ego, an extension of yourself. And so I find a lot of my clients really struggle with that. They want to control what the other parent is doing in the other home, and you just simply cannot. And you have to relinquish that control. And so one of the big counseling aspects to my cases that I talk to my client is whatever is bothering you about the other parent's parenting style. Is it a true danger to your child? Is it very negatively impacting your child? And if not, you have to release control because you're gonna just go crazy trying to control what another person is doing. Even if you guys are parenting together as husband and wife, you wouldn't be able, there's always a dad who's a little more rough or lets, the son play rough and mom doesn't like it. Those are common conflicts that you're going to have in an intact marriage. Imagine now when you guys are divorced. So really relinquishing that control. In Florida, we use what's called a parenting plan, and it really outlines how parties are going to co-parent. And in there, there's just things you wouldn't think that would be included, but it's kind of where the courts have find a lot of conflicts occur. And so one of the provisions is going to be day-to-day decision making. And whoever has the child that day for custody gets to make the decisions. And that includes, does he get tablet time? What's his bedtime? You can't dictate what the other person is doing because he has a right to parent his child the way that he deems best as well, unless it's going to be a safety or a concern to the child.
Okay. Now, I want to dive into myths and misconceptions. I'm sure you hear a lot of these from your clients.
Sure.
But what are some of the most common myths or misconceptions you hear when it comes specifically to the family law side?
Sure. I would say here in the state of Florida specifically, it's the courts favor the mom. The courts, moms should be the primary caretaker. And maybe that's a historical way of thinking, but it's just simply not supported by the law anymore. Here in the state of Florida, there's a rebuttable presumption for equal time sharing. And kind of in layman's terms, what that means is that's where the courts are starting. That's the baseline, is that there's been a lot of research done, and the facts and the statistics show that it's best for a child to spend equal time with both parents. So that's kind of the starting point. And then if a parent is asking the court to deviate from that, they have the burden of proving why that's not in the child's best interest. So, I get a lot of people that say, oh, Florida's a dad state, Florida's a mom state. It's not. There's just this rebuttable presumption for equal time sharing and the idea that in most situations, this would be ideal for the kids.
Okay. Now, let's say that someone is looking for help from a family lawyer. They're thinking about going through divorce, or going through the divorce, whatever it is, and they need a lawyer. They never worked with any lawyer before. So, what advice would you give to this person as they're doing their search so that they can find a lawyer who has the knowledge, has the experience, and can really help them through this tough process?
Sure. I think you hit some of the big points. You want to find an attorney who is knowledgeable and experienced. I think that specifically when it comes to marital law, it's going to be very state specific. And then even within that, it's going to differ very much by regions. So the Miami courts, for example, are going to differ from Orlando courts, which is where I practice here in Central Florida. So I think finding an attorney who is central to your region is oftentimes very beneficial because they're going to be familiar with the local rules and practices and procedures. They're going to be familiar with your judges. And I think that that's important. I think that in any family law case, any kind of decision, I could take the same case to the same judge on a different date and I could get different impacts. I could take the same case with the same facts to two different judges and it could completely change the impact of the case. So I think knowing your judge, that's a term that we use in the legalese, is like know your judge. You want to know your judge and what he's looking for and what he's going to find important because that's how you're going to want to present your case. So finding someone local to your region agent who knows the local procedures, who's knowledgeable in trial. If you have a high conflict case, then you're going to want to go with a trial attorney who had litigation experience. If you're looking to resolve the case amicably, then you want someone who has good experience in negotiating and trying to resolve things amicably. And I think it's important to know what direction your case is going to take.
Okay. And so now, when it comes to setting expectations, how do you set the right expectations with your clients so that they feel informed and supported throughout the process? I'm sure, well, hopefully, most of them, it's their first time going through this. And so I'm sure that there's a lot of confusion, just a lot of uncertainty, like, hey, what's going to happen? What's the timelines? So, how do you set those expectations so that they're not, I guess, freaking out throughout this entire process?
Sure. Well, it all comes back to attorneys were counselors at the end of the day. And so I think just kind of really taking the time to speak to your clients. A lot of clients that do hire me, they find me personable. They say that they can speak to me. And so you can have the most experienced and great attorney, but if you can't speak to him or her effectively, if you can't get answers regarding your case, and this is probably not going to be the best attorney for you because this is your life. This is going to be your family, and everything that stems out of this case is going to impact the rest of your life and your child's life. So you really want an attorney that you can speak to, that you feel that you can express yourself and that listens to you, that is going to take the time to answer your questions and to walk you through the process. I don't think a lot of family law is intuitive. I think that I have a lot of people that come in with preconceived notions and it's just simply not supported by the law. So having someone to set realistic expectations from the very beginning and not just give you a sales call and try to gain your business and not setting realistic expectations is going to be very detrimental.
Got it. Okay. Now, when it comes to the future, where do you think the future of family law is going? Like, are there any changes that people need to pay attention to or just be aware of?
I think that just staying up to date with local laws is always important. I think that family law is ever evolving. And before you're making a decision, if, for example, if you're wanting to get married and you have a business or you have assets, it would probably behoove you to speak to a family law attorney before making those decisions, just even if it's only to be informed. I think, like I said, a marriage decision is going to impact every area of your life. And so having some kind of understanding. So, for example, in the state of Florida, if you start a business during your marriage, whether it's just simply in your name, all of that money is in your business account under your name. Your spouse could still have a marital interest in that property. And so I think understanding that, specifically if you're a business owner, if you're a wage earner, I think it's important to talk to an attorney and just have an understanding. Look, not everyone believes in prenups, but you're going to have a prenup in your marriage, whether you choose to or not. It's either you establish one or the state of Florida establishes one through their local laws.
Okay, so it sounds like you believe, or you're of the opinion that everyone should have a prenup because you're going to have one whether you really want one or not.
Sure. I believe everyone should at least have that conversation. And then they can decide whether it's something that they want to have in their marriage or would suit them. But I think that you should not be getting married unless you're having those difficult conversations from the very beginning. And I think that a failure in communication is the number one indicator that your marriage is going to fail. And so I see that my clients who are having the very difficult conversations from day one are usually the ones that are able to make it through.
Okay. Now, with the future in mind as well, what is the vision you have for your practice?
Sure. Well, right now, I've really designed my firm to be a boutique firm. When you call my law firm, yesterday I had a call and I said, "Hi, this is Grace," and obviously my firm is Grace Law. They're like, "This is Grace. This is actually Grace." I want to be accessible to my clients. I don't want them to be filtered through, a call center overseas and to never speak to me. So I'm seeing uh, obviously growth for my firm and so where I'm able to provide for my family, but I also want to always keep it where I'm accessible and my clients are always speaking to me, and that's really the direction that I'm looking to grow in.
Got it. Okay. Well, Grace, I have one last question for you, but before I ask it, I do want to point people to your website at www.gracelawpa.com. Now, last question for you. What does peace of mind mean to you?
I think as a business owner, peace of mind is being able to financially support my family. I want my business to work for me and not I work for my business. So I do want to build a practice that's able to support my clients, but also work outside of just me being the one laboring down. I wanted to just be very systemized to a point where my clients are getting their service. I'm able to provide for my family and also have a good work-life balance.
Okay, well, there you have it. Grace sharing her expertise. So, Grace, where can people contact you and your practice?
Sure, I do offer free consultations. They're initial preliminary 15-minute consultations where I can hear your situation. You can give me a call and I can let you know if I can be of service. You can do that by calling my office at 407-777-4994 or visit my website. There's a link there where you can schedule a free consultation.
Awesome. Well, this was great, Grace. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, and thanks for sharing your message.
Thank you so much, Danielle.
Thanks for listening to the Verdict Signal podcast. Any questions? Please contact the practice directly with the contact information provided during the show. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now.